Hello, everybody. I'm Tiffany, founder of Class Act Errors Consulting, and today we're going to be talking with Komal. She's a 2023-24 match applicant who applied general surgery. Welcome, Komal.
Hello, Tiffany. It's so nice to be here. So nice to see you after a while.
Yes, it's nice to see you again, too. Congratulations on your match.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A big chunk of the thank you goes to you as well.
Oh, thank you. It was amazing to work with you. I learned a lot from you as well. Um, so today I'm hoping that you can tell everybody a little bit about your journey. I know that you really poured yourself into the work during the application cycle and interview season. So I'm wanting to know if you'll share your journey and if you can offer any advice and tips to people applying this season.
Yes. Okay. So basically, my journey began, I don't know, maybe about 6 years ago. That's when I kind of decided that I wanted to go to the US to do my residency. I kind of, wanted to get out of the country, experience what else is out there, and before I kind of decide where I want to settle down, right? So that's where it started. That's where the whole US dream started. But then it kind of got complicated when I decided that I want general surgery, like for sure. There is no other path in sight. And this was back in about 2019. And, there was a bit of contemplation there first, because the moment usually people decide that it's general surgery, they tend to steer away from the US and, kind of like sort of decide to do it in the home country itself.
Sure.
As in my case, it would have been in India. So that was definitely a consideration. It was a good option for sure. But and then there was just this voice inside me. I know it sounds really cheesy, and my parents also kind of felt the same way, that at least give it a try, at least give it your best. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But like, don't give up before you start, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of just decided to go ahead with it. And I was like, I'm gonna do my best in every step. Like, I knew the steps. And I was really lucky to be from a med school in India where I had seniors who have matched into surgery. So it wasn't as demotivating as it is for a lot of other people. So yeah, we kind of just went ahead with it. We had the checklist, like, which, like, how to do on the steps, how well I need to do, what kind of rotations, step. And then I kind of just like follow my checklist, and somehow we made it here. We're here. We did it.
And so you talk about having a checklist. When you think about your checklist, what parts of it made it onto the CV? Like, what experiences did you plan intentionally so that you knew you would have a competitive application?
Right. So what I always knew I wanted to do was do well on my steps. Have So research is not my strong suit. It's not like I had a ton of research or I had publications to begin with. So I knew for a fact that I wanted to get some research on there. Like, I didn't want to submit a research blank application. I was sure that I wanted to do really good rotations and do well at them, like do well in the rotations in the US, and then like get good letters. So those were things that were very intentional that made it onto the application. A lot of the other things kind of, panned out as the time went.
Will you tell us a little bit more about your application kind of outside of the clinical experience?
Mm-hmm. And like, one thing that I did that was really cool was to do like a voluntary rotation or like a voluntary experience working at a leprosy hospital. Now that was something. So just to dial it back a little bit. So leprosy is a disease that we learned about all the way in like second year of medical school. And India still has a huge burden of leprosy cases, whereas the rest of the world has moved on from it like a while ago. And then it was just one of those things that I really wanted to do. Like, I wanted to work in leprosy for a while before I left India for good. And I was planning to actually do it much later. And then it kind of just hit me, like, if I'm going to do it later, I might as well do it before September and put it on my application. Because it's kind of, it's kind of cool to read, and then I get to do what I wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So that worked out. And then, like a lot of like small things like this that you don't realize over the years of your medical school that you're doing right now, but it might look really cool on your application, right? So I would just say that keep doing cool things. Like if something interests you, even if it's like 3 years before your application season, just do it. There's no harm. Like just branch out a little bit, try new things.
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. One of your experiences on your CV was volunteering in a leprosy hospital, which is not connected to general surgery in any way. But did that come up during your surgery interviews?
Yeah, and again, as you said, that was one of the things I was concerned about because I was like, everyone's gonna ask me, oh, why leprosy? Are you interested in dermat also? Or like, what is it about? But every single interview of mine, like at least one of the interviewers brought it up. Um, and when they were able to see the passion in me, they could kind of understand that even though it's not a pure surgical topic, um, it's public health. It's something that affects all doctors. Like public health is something that affects all doctors. It doesn't have to be field specific. And if you're interested in it, you're interested in it. If it bugs you, it bugs you.
Yeah.
And they were all quite happy to have that discussion with me because, again, leprosy is not something that's common in the US. So they were very excited to have that kind of discussion with me. And it just worked out. It just worked out quite well.
Okay, so then thinking too about the clinical aspect of your CV, you did have a decent amount of US clinical experience. And can you just tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes, absolutely. So I did 3 rotations in the US. But one was in Loyola, Chicago, and 2 were in UAB. Out of the 3, at least I can say 2 were like sub-internships for sure. One was a clinical hands-on elective. Um, and yeah, I was actually very lucky to meet really good mentors while I was in the US. I was able to connect with some attendings who were, you know, really great teachers, who were like well-wishers in a way, who were very
Yeah.
excited to write my letters, who were constantly in touch with me all the way till like right now, till like last month. And this is a year and a half after my rotations. And even some of the residents that I worked with were very like very mentor like basically. And even during the rotations, they taught me a lot basically, especially in my first rotation. They taught me everything from how to use the electronic medical records, for example, because that's something that was new to me. They gave me chances during surgeries. They allowed me to close. They allowed me to suture. In fact, I ended up getting more hands-on like surgical time, OR time in the US than I did in India, which is surprising. But yeah, my rotations were really good.
And going into your rotations, like prior to setting foot in the door of a US hospital, you did not have any connections, correct?
No, I did not have any connections. I have very little family in the US for that matter. So
Okay. And so would
yeah.
you say that after you did start your clinical rotations, that's how you made connections that helped you a little bit?
Yeah, you could say that because I mean, I wouldn't call them connections per se because I only spent 4 weeks in all these rotations, like 4 weeks each. And it's kind of difficult. And in those 4 weeks, you're speaking to a lot of different attendings, right? It's not just one attending. So it's kind of difficult to build like a very like longitudinal relationship with them,
Yeah.
especially one wherein you can ask for help, etc. But I was lucky to actually have one doctor in my corner, at least one of the attendings, and he was in touch with me with respect to like how my interviews are going and all of that, and he was even happy to send out like personal recommendations on my behalf. So
Yeah.
one person for sure, but the other doctors were more like it was a more formal relationship. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now kind of thinking about the actual ERIS CV, right? We've talked a little bit about your journey in deciding that you wanted to pursue surgery and some of the steps that you took to do that, and then your USCE. But what about when it came down to the technical aspect of getting all of that on paper?
Oh my God, Tiffany, getting all of that on paper, I could not have done it. I don't know, half as good as if it wasn't for you, because um being the sort of person that I am, I had overscheduled the year 2023 as well as I had the previous years. And then, you know, I'm not gonna say that the ERIS application is rocket science, but it is pretty complicated. Like, you really need to sit and research every little detail, because it's very easy to skip things. It's a lot of steps in a very convoluted manner, and in a very short time span that you have to like figure out and fill out and send out and deadlines. And there's so much going on, right? So it was really nice to have you by my side, that I could text you and ask you, okay, hey Tiffany, I am stuck or I am lost. And I think getting it down on paper was, yeah, it was definitely a big collaboration between you and me.
And would you say like was it harder than you thought it was going to be? Even, working with me, and I was able to contribute what I've learned over the years to give you advice and guidance on it. But prior to having access to Eris, did you anticipate how complex it would be?
Honestly, I think this is something that I want to tell anyone who's like trying out for USMLE or starting the process. Every step is more complicated than you think it is, or than you expect it to be. Every step. Because, you know, my best friend and I have this little quip between us where we're just like, after we've finished every step, we think that we are done with the hardest part. And then whenever we start the next step, we're like, oh my God, this is so much harder than everything else that we've done. But it really is like that. And yeah, it was pretty complicated. It was a lot more complicated than I expected it to be. And there was a lot of like coordination between me and my medical school and ECFMG and my letter authors, and everyone has to send in their part. And you're constantly emailing like 20 different people every day. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And so when you finally reached the end point, it was late September and it was time to go ahead, certify and apply to the programs. As it's interesting because as you just said, sometimes you think the hardest part is over, but then once you certify and apply, there's a whole new chapter that unfolds. It's not necessarily easier, right?
It's not. As I said before, it does not get easier. I mean, so post September, all the way till March, right? So it's not like you have a lot of work. It's not like, you're actively doing a lot of USMLE work. But then at the same time, it's very, very anxiety filled, like it's constant every day. Because every time I got an interview or every time I did an interview, the days leading up to it were nice and exciting, because I had something to do. And then post that there was the high for a little bit. But yeah, after that, the week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks that I had nothing interview related going on, I would just be freaking out, right? Like I could not calm down. Like I tried to give myself as many pep talks as I could, but nothing helped. I was freaking. It was the only thing that was gonna help was the coming of March. That's it.
Yes, I actually that's something I hear a lot is that the shift from being so incredibly busy and like you said emailing so many people and waiting for all the pieces to fall together, then you apply and it's crickets for a little while, and that anticipation of waiting for the interviews and the stretches in between interviews, it can all be really difficult to kind of cope with like you said. But talk us through that moment when you got your very first interview invitation. What was that like?
Okay, so getting the interviews, my first one was obviously super, super special. And my last one was again extremely special for me. The when I got my last interview, that was for University of Texas, San Antonio. So that's the program that I'm joining now. And so I got 7 interviews basically. And out of the 7, that was the only interview that I cried for. Like the moment I read the email and I started crying, because it's UT San Antonio. It's definitely one of my dream programs, right? Like it's up there. And I got it and I was like, that means I did something well in my application, right? That they liked me.
And what were your thoughts when you got that invitation and it was like a dream program for you? And you had already at that point done a handful of interviews and some interview prep even. Did you feel going into that interview that you were ready for it, or was it like a whole nother level of nervousness?
I mean, I get that. I get what you mean and I get where you're coming from. But I don't know. So interviews is kind of one of my strong suits. Like I actually enjoyed interviewing. I enjoyed speaking to new people. And I kind of like it's like because my application is kind of serious. Because with work, I am pretty serious. But when you meet me, face to face, I'm actually a very jolly person. So it's like a contrast. And I really enjoy this thing, right? So I really like interviewing. So I wasn't stressed out that much. I mean, obviously the nerves are there when you're starting that day, the half an hour before. But the people at UTSA who interviewed me were also so nice. I was so happy after that interview. I have a picture, it's on my Instagram. So I have posted only one picture, like post interview on my Instagram, and that was post UTSA interviews. Like it was a vibe. It was really, really good.
What advice would you give to people who are going to be having interviews in this upcoming cycle?
I feel okay, can I give some advice about the application part first?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So I feel like the basics for sure, like you do good, do well on your steps, like, study hard, do well on your steps. Rotations are important, do well on your rotations, get good letters. I feel that's like the basic. But then again, if you are a specific kind of person who likes a specific kind of activity within medicine, focus on it. The USMLE application is huge. You don't have to be a very stereotypical 250s with clinical experience, with research, with 5 publications, something, 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 and standard application. Like you don't have to be that person. If you don't enjoy research, or if for some reason you didn't do well too, or didn't do too well on your steps, that's okay. There are a lot of areas where you can build it up. And just do your thing, find what your thing is and do it. Like I would really, really recommend that. So that. And then interviews, yeah, again, like go through the questions, prepare your answers, like know what you want to talk about, and don't be don't be embarrassed or ashamed or weird about any of your things. Like it's okay to have messed up somewhere or in one of the aspects. It's okay. I feel they go off of your vibe more than the actual content of it. Because if you're upset about it, that for example, like as I mentioned before, I did not have too much research. So and I'm not shy to say that I don't. When we were talking about things or talking about research, so I wasn't shy to say that, yeah, I did not get a lot of opportunities and I probably would have wanted to do more. And now going forward, that is something that is on my list, that I want to get more involved in research and get more experience, and kind of try and figure out if research is for me. So I wasn't embarrassed to talk about it at all. And I feel we shouldn't be, because we have done quite well to get to the point, right? To submit a complete application. We need to be a little proud of ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad you made that point, because that's something in a lot of the forums that I'm in and IMGs, when they are talking about how to have a competitive application, this need to do everything seems to be emerging, that you have to have publications, posters, research, US clinical experience. You've got to do every single thing out there. And I think your advice to focus on, as you said earlier, focus on what matters to you and what your niche is, and don't be afraid to acknowledge what you haven't had a chance to do yet, because this is the beginning of your journey. So I agree. It's okay to not have done everything yet. And your success is evidence that programs agree.
Oh, thanks, Stephanie. That's so sweet of you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. One last question for you. If you can walk us through, what was match day like?
Mhm. Yes. Okay. So this is a bit of an unexpected turn there, because so you know how on March 11th, you're supposed to find out that you matched. And now I was interviewed by a bunch of prelim programs, some categorical and some transitional year. So that was like the breakdown of my 7 interviews. So I was kind of expecting to match prelim. So it would read you have partially matched because that's what it reads for a 1-year program. So I was expecting that. And that's what it said. But then following that, it also said that the place you've matched at is San Antonio, Texas. And I'm just like, wait, you were not supposed to tell me that today. What do you mean? Like, because I only received one interview from San Antonio, Texas. So basically, match day was done for me on March 11th. And it was brilliant because I was very excited to hopefully read you've matched or you've partially matched. And then to find out where I matched, and then to find out I matched in my number one, I was like, this is insane. I had the best time. I jumped up so high. It was almost a little embarrassing. That's how high I jumped up. And my whole family was sitting around in a circle and we were talking and all of that. And I jet off to my room and I put my surgeon's cap on and I was like, now I can actually wear it around and not look dumb or like, not look crazy.
I love that. I love you had your surgeon's cap ready to go, right?
I did. It was the best. I nicely came and sat. I just wore it and I sat with my family and I'm like, yeah, let's talk now.
Well, I want to congratulate you again. It was an absolute pleasure to work with you over basically the entirety of the summer and then through interview season. And I could not be more joyful for you and your match. And I'm wishing you so much excellence in the months and years ahead.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. It was really, really nice working with you. I mean, guys, I have put out like a huge testimonial for Tiffany on her website. So please look at it to actually, completely understand how much, she meant to my process and how much she affected the outcome or the process itself. Because, it's when you're going through like such a stressful time, any help that you get during this is very, very important to you. Like it really affects you. So yeah, thank you, Tiffany. Thank you.